Hey everybody, how's it going today? Cyclical here with another Naruto discussion video. So for today's video, I wanted to take a short break from doing non-stop versus battles and get a little bit of variety on the channel, and so I was just kind of letting my mind wander about various topics and decided that this seemed like a fun one to do, so here we go. Any of you who watch my videos regularly will know that I don't like to spend a long time on the introduction, but I think I need to lay a little bit of groundwork here. At time of recording this, I don't know what I'm going to title this video, but I'm assuming it's probably not going to really explain what's going on. So basically what I'm going to be discussing today is a list of characters that I feel are best suited to taking on large groups of enemies all at one time. This means that not only are these ninjas individually powerful, but that they also have abilities at their disposal that should make it pretty easy for them to either attack or defend from multiple people at once. Essentially, if you think a character would do well if you were to swap them for Madara's position when he's first introduced against the 4th division of the Shinobi Alliance, then that character should be eligible for this list. By no means will this be an exhaustive list of characters who would do well in this situation, nor is it in any particular order, but with all of that out of the way, let's get right on into it. First on my list, I have Itachi. This could be considered more of an honorable mention than an actual listing, but I think Itachi does do better against groups of people than most people think he would. This is mainly due to the Susanoo, which we clearly see can defend against a lot of people at once and took Gara pulling Madara out of his to get around it, and so it's obvious that Itachi's Susanoo, which has the Yaramir and the Totsuka blade, would be a good defensive option here as well. On top of this, Itachi has good enough taijutsu skills to keep pace with KCM Naruto and B at the same time, meaning that he should be able to give a similar performance to what Madara did at the start of his fight against the Shinobi Alliance. This isn't to say that Itachi's on par with Madara in terms of taijutsu skill. Madara wasn't going all out after all, but since Madara didn't seem to be going all out at the time, I think it's fair to say that Itachi should be capable of taking out a bunch of fodder ninja in hand-to-hand combat. Then lastly, the reason I have Itachi on a list like this is because of the Amaterasu. The Amaterasu has never accomplished much in the series apart from taking down a few background characters and helping to subdue Killer Bee's 8-tailed transformation, but the jutsu is still treated as one of the most powerful in the series for a reason. Most ninja would be incapable of avoiding or resisting the flames of Amaterasu, and fortunately for Itachi, most ninja is exactly who would be facing in this situation. Pair this with the fact that the Amaterasu can spread incredibly far, and I think it's easy enough to imagine a situation in which Itachi just flings it around the battlefield, creating a situation nearly as dire as when Madara dropped the Tengai Shinsei on the 4th division. I mean seriously, if you look at the aftermath of the Itachi vs Sasuke fight, the Amaterasu is spread what seems like miles beyond the Uchiha hideout, and the Naruto and Kakashi team that go to retrieve Sasuke have to take specific detours to get around it. Of course, these are pretty much the only jutsu of Itachi's that I think are suited to taking on a large group of people at once, and the majority of his arsenal is much better suited for single combat, which is why I said you might consider him more of an honorable mention than some of the others I put later in the video. Next up in my list, I have Nagato or Pain. It doesn't really matter which one, but I'll go over both a little bit. I think this entry should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'll still take a minute to break him down. The powers of the Rinnegan may be the single best set of abilities for taking on a group of fighters in the entire series. The shared vision from the Rinnegan means that the user will pretty much always be able to dodge incoming attacks even while completely surrounded. The animal path summons are some of the strongest in the entire ninja world and can do some pretty serious damage, on top of the fact that they can provide extra mobility or stealth to the paths of pain, either with the drill-beaked bird being able to fly or the chameleon being able to turn invisible. The Chimera Dog in particular would be incredibly useful in a massive battlefield setting, since it can't be killed and is able to split into more and more clones of itself. The Preta Path would be an unstoppable defensive option since it can absorb incoming ninjutsu with seemingly no limit, meaning that a group like the Shinobi Alliance would be nearly incapable of destroying the Paths of Pain with ninjutsu. The Naraka Path's ability to revive the others gives an extra longevity to the other Paths of Pain and should reasonably be able to be defended by the other paths, since each individual path should be strong enough to handle multiple high-level shinobi at the same time. And then lastly, there's the Diva Path, which I shouldn't need to explain, can just destroy an entire army by either using the chaotic Shinra Tensei or the Chubake Tensei, either of which would be a devastating blow to an enemy group, if not an outright win condition depending on how many people he's fighting against. If you want to use Nagato instead of the 6 paths though, the only factors that really change are that he no longer has the shared vision of having multiple bodies and he can't resurrect himself with the Naraka Path. In exchange, Nagato is far stronger than any of the individual Paths of Pain. He could make use of the human path's ability to rip out people's souls, and he can summon the Ghetto statue, which we have already seen firsthand is a game changer on its own. Pain was already capable of taking on the entire Leaf Village on his own, which should make it obvious that unless someone on at least the level of Sage Naruto shows up, he's borderline unstoppable. Next up, I have Minato. Minato is an interesting one, since his ability to deal with a large group of enemies seems largely dependent on how many flying Raijin tags he has on the battlefield. I'd make the argument though that Minato should be capable of getting these placed around without much difficulty. One example of a strategy that he could use would be to summon Gamabunta, who is himself a huge threat to a group of adverb shinobi. With Gamabunta present on the battlefield, Minato could use a few shadow clones to help get his flying Raijin marked kunai distributed around the battlefield, and from there we'd probably get just a retelling of what happened during the mission to destroy the Kanabi Bridge during the Third Shinobi World War. Minato was one of the few shinobi he's ever gotten a run on sight order, and as we see him take down a group of 50 enemy ninja in a matter of only seconds, I think it's fair to assume he would do well in a one versus an army scenario. After Minato, I have Hashirama, who I don't think I need to do much explaining on. The man is stronger than Madara, has more chakra than Naruto, and has better healing jutsu than Tsunade. This makes him a person who can destroy large areas at a time, can fight for days on end, and who is borderline invincible all at the same time. Honestly, if Kabuto had summoned Hashirama to the battle against the 4th Division instead of Madara, we might have had a different ending to the entire series. Now after Hashirama, I have Naruto and Sasuke, who once again I don't think need much explanation here. By the end of the war, Naruto and Sasuke have both individually surpassed both Madara and Hashirama, and so they'd be able to take on a group the size of the 4th Division with ease. Each of these two have attacks that could individually recreate the Final Valley, and colliding two of these attacks together destroyed the Final Valley itself. Naruto has the ability to clone himself thousands of times, and Sasuke has the ability to create multiple Chibaku Tensei at once, which is an ability that I already said would make Pain a huge threat for just creating one of. The two of these guys are crazy strong, and so individually I think they'd be just fine against pretty much any army. There's even arguments that I've heard that if the two of them were to fight each other and the rest of the series characters were present, they would probably just die in the crossfire, and so I think I can pretty safely move on. Now the last character I want to discuss in this setting is Gara. Now Gara's kind of interesting in a similar way to Itachi, not that his moveset is geared towards single combat, but because he's definitely the weakest person I have on the list. But that's where things get kinda spicy because Gara could absolutely crush an army by himself. We see during his fight with Deidara, for example, that Gara can control enough sand to cover almost the entire hidden sand village. He has to be careful to get all this sand outside the village walls before he drops it too, because it's implied that the weight of all of this sand would probably destroy the village. Then we also see from Gara things like his ability to seal people away under his sand with the Grand Sand Mausoleum, that his sand can defend him independently of his own will, and that he can launch massive attacks like the Sand Tsunami that he can turn into a massive sand burial. He can fly to remain out of reach of his opponents, and he has enough chakra to remain in a drawn-out fight. On the other hand though, Gara is one of the weaker members of the Kage, and so having any sufficiently strong enemies present would pose a serious challenge to him. If we were to say he was in Madara's position during the Fourth War, then Gara having to contend with both Naruto and Inoki would probably too much for him to handle, let alone the roughly 20,000 shinobi that were also present. But if he's in a situation where there aren't any super high tier ninja around, then Gara could probably come away from a battle against thousands of ninja and be more tired than injured. In the case of someone like this, I think the biggest factor is in whether there are any ninja of the same caliber as themselves around. You could probably make this same argument for many other characters in the series, but like I said, this isn't an exhaustive list. So that's going to be all I've got for today's discussion. I hope you all enjoyed, and hopefully this also got you thinking about some of your favorite characters and how they'd do in a similar situation. If you are thinking about that, go ahead and bring up those other characters in the comments down below, and we can go ahead and discuss how they would do against an army of other ninja. Otherwise, I'll hope to see you all in the next video. Stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and goodbye.